I didn't catch her cheating. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't looking for anything. My phone just stopped working and I used hers. That's all it took. One message. 3 lines. And suddenly, everything I thought I understood about my life stopped making sense. It was a Tuesday in late October. A perfectly normal, suburban morning in Connecticut. My phone screen had gone black an hour earlier, just a dead digitizer, nothing dramatic. I needed to call our insurance agent about a minor claim, so I walked into the kitchen. My wife, Melanie, was at the counter. She was humming to some lo-fi music while prepping a roast for the slow cooker. The house smelled like cinnamon and expensive coffee. It felt stable. It felt safe. Her phone was sitting right there on the granite island, plugged in and unlocked. I picked it up, intending to just hit the keypad. But before I could even tap a number, a notification banner slid down. It was a name I saw on my own caller ID at least 3 times a week. Marcus. Marcus wasn't just some guy. He was my regional director. He was the man who had mentored me for a decade, the one who invited me to his cabin for fishing trips, the one who had pushed for every promotion I'd ever received. I considered him my best friend. The message was short. It said, "I'll make sure he's sent to the Philadelphia conference again this week. Thursday will be much easier for us. Come over an hour earlier than last time." I stood there, frozen. I read it once. Then I read it again, slower. Your brain has this weird way of protecting you. It tries to find a logical exit. Maybe it's a surprise party? Maybe they're planning a gift for my 45th birthday? But the word again was a jagged piece of glass. It cut through every lie I tried to tell myself. Behind me, the faucet was running. Melanie was rinsing vegetables, completely unaware that my entire world had just shifted 6 inches to the left. We had been married for 15 years. We had a life built on mortgage payments, shared vacations, and the kind of quiet trust you don't even think to question. Or so I thought. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. A cold, sharp clarity washed over me that I didn't know I possessed. I realized in that moment that if I confronted her right then, I'd get a curated version of the truth. I'd get tears, excuses, and a story about a one-time mistake. But that message wasn't a mistake. It was a schedule. It was a logistical operation. I carefully slid the phone back onto the charger, placing it at the exact same angle. I walked into the mudroom, grabbed my keys, and told Melanie I was heading to the mall to get my screen replaced. My voice was steady, unnervingly so. She just smiled, told me to be safe, and asked if I could grab a specific bottle of wine for dinner. As I backed the SUV out of the driveway, I looked at our house. It looked exactly the same. But for the first time in 15 years, I stopped assuming I knew what was happening inside those walls. That night I didn't sleep. Not because I was pacing the floor or crying, but because I was reorganizing every memory of the last 2 years. I lay there in our king-sized bed, listening to Melanie's breathing, steady, rhythmic, peaceful. It was the sound of a woman who didn't have a care in the world because she believed her husband was too blind to see. The message from Marcus wasn't just a sign of an affair, it was a blueprint. Again. That word was a ghost that haunted every business trip I'd taken in the last year. Every urgent overnight in Philadelphia, every leadership retreat in the Catskills that Marcus had insisted I attend. He wasn't just my boss, he was the architect of my absence. He was literally clearing the path so he could walk into my home. The next morning, my phone buzzed at exactly 9:12 a.m. It was the new device I'd picked up at the Apple store. The caller ID flashed, Marcus. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my voice stayed level. Hey Marcus. What's up? Listen, buddy. His voice was warm, full of that faux brotherly energy I used to admire. I know it's short notice, but the regional audit in Philly is hitting a snag. You're the only one I trust to smooth things over with the inspectors. Can you head out Thursday morning? 3 days, all expenses on the firm. I'll make sure there's a bonus in it for the hassle. In the past, I would have thanked him. I would have felt honored. This time I just looked at Melanie. She was pouring orange juice, her back to me, but I saw her shoulders relax just a fraction when she heard the word Thursday. Sure thing, Marcus, I said. I'm your man. I'll get my things together. That's why you're the best, pal. See you at the briefing later. I hung up and set the phone down. Marcus needs me in Philly again, I told her, watching for a reaction. Melanie turned around, her expression a perfect mask of supportive disappointment. Again? Oh honey, you've been working so hard lately. But hey, if it helps with the promotion, it's worth it, right? I'll make sure your gray suit is pressed. It was a masterclass in acting. She wasn't just lying, she was participating in the logistics of her own betrayal. She was literally packing the bag that would carry me away so her lover could arrive. I spent the rest of the day in a state of hyper-awareness. Everything felt like a clue. I noticed how she checked her watch when I said I'd be home late for a pre-trip meeting. I noticed the way she hummed while she did the laundry, the kind of cheerful energy that usually precedes a date. I realized then that this wasn't a mistake they had stumbled into. They had turned my life into a schedule. They had calculated the minutes, the miles, and the costs. My career, my marriage, and my friendship with Marcus were all just variables in an equation they were solving behind my back. But as I sat in my home office that evening, looking at the luggage Melanie had neatly placed by the door, I felt a new sensation. It wasn't anger anymore. It was control. They thought they were the directors of this play and I was just a background character. They didn't realize that I had just walked off the script. By Thursday morning, the air in our house was thick with a kind of performative kindness that made my skin crawl. Melanie had made my favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes and thick-cut bacon. She sat across from me, sipping her coffee, looking like the picture of a devoted wife. "Make sure you call me when you get to the hotel," she said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. Her perfume, something light and floral I'd bought her for our anniversary, felt like a physical weight. I hate it when you're on the road, but I'm so proud of how Marcus relies on you. I grabbed my suitcase, the one she had neatly packed with the suits I wouldn't be wearing, and walked out the door. I drove my silver Lexus toward the train station, but I didn't park in the long-term lot. Instead, I drove to a parking garage 3 towns over, ditched the car, and took a rideshare back toward our neighborhood. I didn't go home. I checked into a nondescript express inn about 4 miles from our house. I paid in cash, something I'd never done in 15 years of marriage. No paper trail. No digital footprint. Just a room with a view of a strip mall and a flickering TV. At 6:40 p.m. my new phone buzzed. It was a text from Melanie. "Did you arrive safely? The house feels so empty already." I looked at the screen, my thumb hovering over the glass. I waited exactly 4 minutes before typing back. "Just checked in. Long day of meetings tomorrow. Heading to bed early." Her reply was instantaneous. "Rest well, honey. Love you." The word love looked like a typo. It didn't belong in that sentence. It didn't belong in our life anymore. Around 8 p.m. I received a message from Marcus. "Kick some tail tomorrow, champ. You're the face of this firm." I sat in the dark of that hotel room, the only light coming from the neon sign of a nearby diner. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is a hot, messy emotion that makes you drop your guard. What I felt was a cold, analytical detachment. I was no longer a husband or a friend. I was an observer watching a high-stakes play from the wings. I realized then that this wasn't just about a secret romance. It was about the arrogance of it all. They didn't just want to be together, they wanted to use my life as the stage for their convenience. They needed me to be the good provider, the reliable employee, and the oblivious husband, so that their world could keep spinning. I spent the night looking at old photos on my phone, the trip to Napa, the housewarming party, the grainy selfies from our first apartment. I was looking for the cracks I must have missed, the moments where the light changed. But there were none. The betrayal wasn't a sudden break. It was a slow, silent rot that had been masked by the mundane routines of a happy marriage. As the sun began to rise over the Connecticut suburbs, I knew I didn't need to catch them in a hotel room or film them through a window. I already had the only truth that mattered. They thought I was a man who couldn't see. And that was the biggest mistake they ever made. I didn't wait for Friday. I checked out of that budget hotel at 10 a.m. on Thursday morning, drove back to my car and headed home. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just pulled into the driveway of our colonial in the quietest part of town. The silver SUV wasn't there, but the house felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. I walked inside. The smell of the slow cooker roast from Tuesday was gone, replaced by the sharp, clean scent of lemon polish. Melanie had been busy. The living room was spotless. The pillows on the couch were perfectly fluffed. It was a stage set for a homecoming that wasn't supposed to happen for another 48 hours. I sat down in my leather armchair, the one Marcus had helped me pick out 3 years ago, and I waited. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't turn on the TV. I just sat in the gray afternoon light of the Connecticut autumn, watching the dust motes dance in the air. At 3:15 p.m. I heard her car pull in. The garage door groaned open then shut. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, a upbeat rhythm. She was humming again. That same indie folk song. She walked into the living room, dropping her keys on the side table, and then she saw me. She didn't scream. She didn't drop anything. She just froze. It was like watching a computer program crash in real time. Her brain was trying to reconcile the man sitting in the chair with the man who was supposed to be 300 miles away in a conference room. "Honey," her voice was thin, brittle. What are you doing here? Is the audit over?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. I saw the way her eyes darted to her phone then back to me. I saw the slight flush on her neck. "I'm not going on any more trips, Melanie," I said. My voice was so calm it surprised even me. She blinked, her hand going to her throat. I don't understand. Did something happen with Marcus? Did he fire you? No, I replied, standing up slowly. Marcus didn't fire me. He scheduled me. And you coordinated it. Tell me, is it easier for you when I'm not here? Or is the thrill in the planning? The color drained from her face so fast it was like someone had pulled a plug. She didn't try to deny it. She didn't ask, "What are you talking about?" That's how I knew she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. She had already rehearsed her defense, but she hadn't expected the prosecutor to show up early. I can explain, she started, her voice gaining a desperate edge. It's not what you think. Marcus, he's been under a lot of pressure and we just... Stop, I said, holding up a hand. I don't need the explanation. I read the 3 lines on your phone Tuesday morning. I saw the again. I saw the Thursday. I've spent the last 48 hours in a motel 4 miles away watching your life continue without me. I don't need to know why. I just need to know if you ever thought I'd actually see you. She looked at me and for a second the mask of the supportive wife slipped completely. Beneath it was something cold and dismissive. She didn't answer. She just stood there in our perfect living room, the silence stretching out until it felt like it would snap. In that silence I realized the truth was worse than the affair. It wasn't that she loved Marcus. It was that she didn't respect me enough to think I was capable of leaving. She thought I was a fixture like the water heater or the roof. Something that just stayed in place while she lived her real life. I picked up my keys from the coffee table. You don't have to explain anything, Melanie. Not to me. Not anymore. For the first time in 15 years she looked truly scared. Not because she was losing her husband, but because she realized she had lost her audience. The oblivious man she had been performing for was gone. And without him, her beautiful, coordinated life was just a house full of expensive furniture and empty promises. After that afternoon in the living room, the world went quiet. Not a peaceful quiet, but the kind of heavy silence you feel right before a massive storm breaks. I didn't move out that night. There was no dramatic packing of suitcases or throwing clothes onto the lawn. I just moved into the guest room, locked the door, and let the logistics of a 15-year life start to unravel. Melanie tried the soft approach first. She'd leave notes under the door. She'd make coffee in the morning and leave it on the counter with a sad, lingering look. She was waiting for the explosion, the yelling, the crying, the part where we work it out. But I didn't give it to her. When you realize the person you share a bed with has been treating you like a pawn in a game, you don't want to argue. You just want to stop playing. But the real blow didn't come from the house. It came from the office. I went back to work on Monday. I needed to see Marcus. I needed to look at the man who had been mentoring me while he was dismantling my marriage. I walked into his corner office, the one with the view of the Sound, and sat down before he could even look up from his laptop. "Hey buddy," he said, his smile as bright and fake as a new penny. "How was Philly? Did we nail those inspectors?" I didn't smile back. I just looked at him until the grin started to fade, slipping off his face like wet paint. "I didn't go to Philly, Marcus. And I think you know exactly why." He tried to play it off. He did the confused boss routine for about 30 seconds before the silence got too heavy for him. He leaned back, his expensive chair creaking, and his entire demeanor shifted. The friend was gone. The predator was left. "Look," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "It's a complicated situation. These things happen in high-pressure environments. We should probably keep our personal lives separate from the firm, don't you think?" That's when it hit me. He wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He had been using his power at the firm to ensure I was always busy enough to stay out of the way, but productive enough to keep the department's numbers high. I was his favorite tool. I was the guy who did the work so he could take the credit, and the wife. I walked out of his office without saying another word. I didn't need to quit, I just stopped caring about his leadership. Over the next few weeks, I watched from the guest room as Melanie's world started to crack. It turns out, when you remove the oblivious husband from the equation, the affair loses its luster. There was no more thrill of the secret. No more Thursday logistics. There was just a man who didn't speak to her and a lover who was suddenly very worried about his HR file. I spent my evenings at a small diner 3 towns over, eating alone and watching people. I wasn't sad. I was recalibrating. I realized that for 15 years, I had been living a version of my life that was written by other people. I had been a good husband because Melanie expected it. I had been a top performer because Marcus demanded it. Closure, I discovered, doesn't feel like a victory. It doesn't feel like a movie ending where you walk away into the sunset. It feels like an absence. Like a heavy backpack you've been carrying for a decade has suddenly been cut from your shoulders. It's lighter, sure, but your back still aches from the weight that used to be there. About 6 months after I moved into my own apartment, a quiet, sunlit place in a different zip code, I ran into a former colleague named Derek at a hardware store. We did the usual awkward dance of small talk. Then Derek lowered his voice. "Man, I'm sorry about how things went down at the firm," he said, looking around to make sure no one was listening. "But honestly, you weren't the only one. Marcus, he had a system." I stopped looking at the drill bits and looked at him. "A system?" "Yeah," Derek nodded. "He didn't just pick favorites. He picked reliable guys. Guys with stable marriages and high work ethics. He'd promote them, send them on the road, and then move in on their wives. He called it the executive perk, behind closed doors. He'd done it to 2 other guys before you. One moved to California, the other just quit and disappeared. It was the final piece of the puzzle. It wasn't a grand romance between Melanie and Marcus. It was a predator and a willing participant. Marcus didn't love her, he just loved the control. And Melanie? She wasn't a victim. She was just the latest lead in his recurring play. The pattern break happened a few weeks later. I heard through the grapevine that the firm's board had finally caught wind of Marcus's management style. There was an anonymous tip, not from me though I'd thought about it, but from one of the other wives who hadn't been as quiet as Melanie. Marcus was gone in 48 hours. No golden parachute. No graceful exit. Just a cardboard box and a security escort. And Melanie? Without the excitement of the corporate power dynamic, the relationship crumbled. Marcus didn't want a girlfriend, he wanted a secret. Once it was public, he didn't even return her calls. I saw her one last time at a small diner near the train station. She was sitting alone, looking at her phone, waiting for a message that wasn't coming. She looked older. Not in years but in spirit. She saw me walk in and for a second she started to stand up. She looked like she wanted to offer an apology, an explanation, or maybe just a plea for the life we used to have. But I didn't stop. I didn't feel the anger I expected. I didn't feel the victory of seeing her alone. I just felt nothing. And that was the most powerful feeling in the world. As I walked out into the cool evening air, I realized something. That message I wasn't supposed to see on that Tuesday morning, it didn't destroy my life. It saved it. It was my point X. The moment where the trajectory of my life hit a wall and had to find a new direction. Some betrayals don't end you, they just remove the people who were already draining the life out of you one Thursday trip at a time. I didn't need her apology to move on. I didn't need Marcus's downfall to feel whole. The update, the realization that they were never who I thought they were, was enough. I wasn't reacting to my life anymore. I was finally choosing it. At Elfix Tales, we don't give advice or tell you how to feel. We tell stories that take pain to its ending, because every betrayal deserves closure. From betrayal to inner justice. That is the journey. If you've ever had to rebuild your life after something like this, subscribe, there are more stories here that might stay with you.